You just gotta check this out. Step in here. Yeah. We are here at the bustling Shibuya station in Shibuya, Tokyo. It is the busiest crossing in the entire world. And let me tell you, behind me is the train station, and there are people flooding out all the time. There's not even been a little bit of a shortage of people. The people just are very organized. They go across the street. That's what it is. It's a crossing. But it is just so very clean how well they execute it. And by the time the next light goes off, the roads will be cleared and cars will be passing through. It's a very famous crossing just because of how hectic yet so organized it is all at the same time. There's also a bustling city area, lots of different shops and food places and places to see. We're hoping to also see, and I'm not sure if it's here or not, but I'm also hoping to see the Hachi dog statue. We're also hearing a lot over here. There's a lot of advertisements going on at once. It's really just a bustling and loud city, but it's a lot like Times Square, New York, or something like that in that aspect. Really beautiful place, similar to Akihabara in a lot of ways, but we're gonna go see some stores and some sites, and you'll see what it looks like. Currently we are in the Parco shopping complex. I'm gonna try to get maybe some pictures, probably not a lot of videos from here. This place is massive. I'm on the 10th floor observatory from the rooftop. As you can see, city of Shibuya is behind me. The crossing's back there, probably that big, tall, skyrise building. It's around there. So we are actually going to be going to a few shops. There's a Nintendo store, and they actually gave us a ticket for the Nintendo store, and we have to go back in a couple hours. We're probably just gonna get some food and hang out until then. We went to a streetwear floor where there was a lot of really cool drip. Americans just don't have quite the drip that people here have. I'm just going to be honest, because it is a lot of luxury brands, a lot of really cool stuff. Shibuya in general is just a happening place, kind of like Shinjuku, but even maybe even on steroids, because there's just so much to do here in Shibuya. Heck, we might even stay at this mall for most of the day because there's just so much to see. We've seen Shibuya Crossing, we've seen Hachi, we've seen a lot of the more famous sites, but now we're just kind of roaming about and seeing some of maybe the less famous sites, but some stuff that is really kind of entertaining to both myself and Tony. Welcome to Japan National Stadium. You can see it right behind me here. It's really, really beautiful architecture. It's interesting, the wooden slats kind of remind me of maybe a xylophone or something, the way that they've designed it. But it's a very intricate design, very well done. I'm sure they spent quite a few bucks in order to make that happen, but something that they also probably spent a few bucks on is what's behind me here, and that is the cauldron. So when the Olympic Games begin, you may know that they light a cauldron as a way to signify the beginning of the Olympic Games. They do it at the opening ceremonies. And so for this particular cauldron, there's actually an info board over to my right, and that talks a little bit about the kind of history of this cauldron. There's one from the 60s Olympic Games. This cauldron here was lit using hydrogen fuel. It was the first one ever to use clean fuel, which is just a fun little fact about this particular cauldron. So we are at the Olympic Stadium. It's very, very quiet around here, mostly because there's no shops or anything nearby. It's nothing's really open around it. It's not a popping area like Shinjuku or Shibuya, but it's a very kind of serene, nice little walk around. You see a lot of joggers going back and forth, people who are getting their steps in, but not a lot of people who are here for tourism, which kind of works out so that we can get a nice little view of it. It's a very, very beautiful area, and it's a very, very beautiful stadium. With as many times as I've said things are nice and pretty and beautiful, honestly, I should be part of the tourism board for Japan at this point. But it's also true. There's just so much to see, and I will say this is maybe likely the last video that I'll make while we're here in Tokyo, but fear not, because we're moving on to our next stay, and that one's a little bit of a surprise, and then we've got 2 more stays. One is Osaka and the other is Kyoto, and there's just so much more to see, and me and Tony are both very excited to see what those areas hold. So bear with me, and on to the next place. Yeah, you know those cakes you always see in anime, and you're like, those are really good with the strawberry on top, and you're like, those can't be real, but they look really good. Yeah, you know those? Check this out. It looks so good. And we are both in our hotel room, and by our, I mean mine.
Yep.
I
don't let him in mine.
No, I've not been in there even once, except for the times that I have. So we are spending our last evening here in Tokyo, and I just showed you that cake because that's how we're finishing it off. It's just a good Christmas night meal for us, just something where we can relax and stay in the room and be ready, because we have an early train ride tomorrow to our next location.
Yeah, gotta wake up very early.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I think we'll probably be up by like 7:30-ish, maybe even a little earlier.
Yeah, probably earlier.
Yeah, but because we have a train to catch, and it's a long ride, roughly 5 hours, maybe even a little longer than 5 hours.
Yeah.
So in order to make that train and do everything right there, we just decided, rather than spend our last night here in Tokyo for now, out on the town, we figured we'd pack it in early. But Tony, do you think you have seen everything in Tokyo there is to see at this point?
Yeah, we've been over 3, 4, 5 different prefectures.
Or cities
yeah.
within the Tokyo prefecture. Yeah.
Yep. We've been to 5 different shrines, and I've eaten a lot of good food. So
it's like you walk into a restaurant and there's like 6 seats, and you go and you sit down and you request something in English that you have no context for, and they give you a plate of the greatest thing you've ever had.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to explain it.
And that's every restaurant. You're like, oh, this place has 3 stars on Google. It's probably crap. Oh, wait, it's life-changing food.
It's the best food I've ever had.
Yeah.
Every time.
We've been to like whether it's a sushi place or a nanban place, or I went to a curry place tonight.
Yeah.
It's just every single time the food just hits, and I can't explain how they do it, but they do.
It's always the best food ever, but it's always different food, like different types. It's always the best of that food I've ever had.
Yes. and even if it's not the best food, they find ways to make it fun, like at our themed cafes that we've been to.
Those
and things
cool.
like that.
Yep.
So a lot of great restaurants. The shopping has been immaculate as well. So many things to see. Tony walked into an art shop this evening and got himself a little postcard from like a local artist or something, and it wasn't something he even like planned on doing. But I mean, check that out. Isn't that just super neat? So between the sites, the shops, and the food, it's just been really excellent so far. And I mean, if we ever come back, we might do a couple things differently, but for the most part, if you came to Tokyo and you're the tourist and you did everything that we did in our span of time, I think you would have an amazing time.
Yeah.
So
not too much more that you could do better.
Nope. Well, maybe buy a couple more figures. All right, so we are in our very own ryokan room. And a ryokan is a little bit of a different stay. We are actually in an area known as Kinosaki. And Kinosaki is known for onsen. Onsen are hot springs. And so we are in a bit of a luxury stay right now. And we are going to go from hot spring to hot spring. They gave us free passes so that we could go from place to place to place and go visit every single hot spring that Kinosaki has to offer. So I'm gonna do some quick shots for you guys. They actually served us tea right here on the table, and the table is in a very traditional Japanese style, as our beds will be made later, and you guys will see that. You probably won't see the making of the beds, but we don't do that. They do it for us. They're tatami mats that will be placed on the floor, and we will sleep on the floor in futon beds, essentially. On top of that, we've got dinner and breakfast provided, and I, right now, am going to change into what you guys will see in just a moment, the yukatas that we are also provided, so neatly folded. A woman came in to start our experience, poured the tea, handed us our yukatas, and told us how the process worked. The only embarrassing part is we got to figure out how hot springs work. It's a little embarrassing, but at the same time, it's going to be a learning experience, and once we kind of get into the flow of things, this is going to be one of the more serene stays I think I've ever had, let alone here in Japan. We're out in the streets now, and we have been to exactly one onsen outside of the one in our ryokan, our hotel. As you can see behind me, it's a really nice street to walk at night. We're just going from place to place, and we're hanging out and having a great time. Still a bustling city. I mean, you hear cars passing me as I film this. There's a lot going on still. It's not like it's a quiet town in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it is a long haul. It was about 5 hours from Tokyo, and 2 of those hours were on a bullet train, so it is a journey, it's a trek, but once you actually get to Kinosaki itself, it's bustling with tourists, both international, but mostly domestic, it looks from what I've seen. A lot of people out on the streets doing the same thing we are, wearing yukatas and roaming the streets, going to different onsens. It's really cool, actually, to be able to be with the people of Japan doing something that they're doing, rather than just something that a lot of tourists would do. All right, so we're at a ryokan in Japan, basically a hotel, but more traditional, and you just gotta check this out. Step in here. They got the toilet seat to lift up, and then you got the bidet settings and all that fun stuff. Multiple flushing options here. We're too spoiled. So we are here in our ryokan still, and we just had breakfast, and it was still a couple courses worth of food. It came with miso soup. They asked if we wanted rice as well. We didn't go for that this time around, but there was just so much food. Once again, the dinner though, that was, I mean, obviously the highlight here. But we've still got about an hour left here before we check out. So I just thought I'd show you guys kind of the amazing view that we have from our room here. People walking the streets, you can hear the clacking of wood shoes on occasion, because those wood shoes, let me tell you, me and Tony walked in them last night and it was kind of a nightmare. His were like broken the first time we went out, so he was off balance the whole time. But the wood shoes are about that high off the ground, and you kind of go heel to toe in them, and so it's a really weird rhythm. You just kind of have to get used to it. You pick it up pretty quickly, but it is something when you first try it that's a little odd. But you hear that outside, and it's people who are in their yukatas going from onsen to onsen, probably trying to get 1 or 2 more in before they have to check out like we do. But yeah, we are just going to be kind of soak it all in until we leave here. We've got everything mostly packed up. We got maybe a couple things to put in our bags, like I gotta get out of this and get it back into my normal clothes. But man, I just love this thing. I wish I could keep it, honestly, but it is the ryokans. I'll probably see if there's a place around that sells a yukata that I can wear, but in general, I'm just sitting here kind of in awe of this view, and we'll definitely have a few more views on our way home to Osaka for our next stop. We're still in rural Japan, and it's still just ever so beautiful. So stick with me, and we'll go to Osaka.
の次